Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's presentation. Before we go ahead and start today's presentation, I wanted to cover a bit of housekeeping issues with you all. We are recording today's session, so keep an eye in your inbox for a link to the recording that you can use for review or to share with a colleague who maybe couldn't be here today. Also, we will be trying to address everyone's questions at the end of today's presentation. So if you have any questions for any of our panelists today, please feel free to direct them via the chat and or questions window, and we'll do our best to get to everyone's questions as time allows. With that being said, I'd like to go ahead and welcome you to today's session. It's the second session in our webinar series. Today's session is enabling a quick and seamless VDI migration to Google Cloud Platform. The previous session was about 2 weeks ago, which was modernizing VDI and simplifying IT on Google Cloud. We have a recording of that available, so if you keep an eye out for the follow-up, you'll see a link to that recording as well. You'll also see links to the recordings for our July 14th and July 21st sessions that are listed in steps 3 and 4. Those are our 3rd and 4th sessions in the series. And you'll see registration links to those. So I encourage you to go ahead and check those out. So without much ado, I'm going to go ahead and hand things off to James Riley, who's going to take us through today's presentation. He's our representative from Itopia. We'll also have representatives from Liquidware. Thomas Lessois is with us, and Shiva Raja from HYCU will also be joining us today. So James, you want to go ahead and walk us through today's agenda?
Yes, everyone, we're excited to have you a part of this second part of our webinar. And we're going to start with a quick recap of migrating VDI to Google Cloud. Then we'll kind of introduce Liquidware, who is preparing for migration with assessment and design. From there, we'll show you how Itopia can rapidly deploy your initial environment and take you through our provisioning wizard. Then we'll come back to Liquidware on how we complete that migrations with users and applications. And then lastly, with HYCU, on how we can add the one-click data migration to really kind of deliver an entire end-to-end experience while delivering VDI in Google Cloud. So really, we want to start today on why we choose Google as our partner. And we feel that Google provides really the best cloud when it comes to providing your digital transformation journey. Really starting with low latency, leveraging their fiber network deployed all around the world, their different points of presence, along with the data centers that they continue to spin up. And then lastly, from a security standpoint, they can match any sort of certification of any other cloud provider and really can provide a enterprise-grade security system for your customers and your company. And so in saying that, each partner here today provides a piece of technology that really provides you a pathway for this migration. So Itopia is going to make it very easy to deliver a virtual desktop to any device on GCP by providing the orchestration and management layer. Liquidware will simplify the user, desktop, and applications management at scale on Google Cloud, and HYCU will enable a continuous data protection for remote environments on GCP. So as you can see, different technology vendors have different purposes as part of this digital transformation journey to bring VDI on GCP, and we'll be happy to highlight how that works here today. So when it comes to thinking about from on-premises taking VDI to the cloud, you'll see that we really look to reduce some of the complexities that come around managing various vendors, cost, just the day-to-day management, and then really capacity issues, right? You can plan for overcapacity. You could have not enough capacity when you need to send people home, like what we've seen with COVID-19. But we really look to modernize that whole experience and eliminate any sort of complexity by taking a trusted service, which is Microsoft's remote desktop services, being able to host that on Google Cloud and start to integrate some of the unique Google technology into these environments. And then lastly, the itopia piece, where we come in and we automate over 300 tasks related to managing this entire environment. So our goal is to make this very easy, very simple, again, elegant from a management UI perspective, and last but not least, make it scalable so you guys can really meet the demand of where your organization is today. We do all of this through our control panel. So it's a SaaS product. You don't have to go into the Google Cloud Platform. You don't have to log into Windows servers or use PowerShell scripts. Really, this unified console with a few clicks allows you to build very complex, large-scale VDI deployments where we can integrate with our other partners from Liquidware and HYCU as well. So at this point, I'll pass it over to Liquidware, where they're really going to show you how you start this migration process, and then we'll come back and show you how it's done inside itopia.
Thank you, James, and hello, everyone. This is Thomas from Liquidware, and I'll take you through the first step, which is the assessment process. So first, I wanted to put it out there is, do you actually need a migration? And it's a valid question. And the real answer is, it depends, like every technical question. In our past 10 years experience, when we see users or customers moving from one state to another, one platform to another, we can honestly say that both options are valid. You could decide, yeah, I want to migrate my existing environments from A to B, or I want to stay greenfield. Start greenfield, start fresh, and build up. Kind of give me the opportunity to have a clean slate. And both are, again, definitely valid. To be clear, though, we're not specifically, at least in our view, and as far as Liquidware is usually engaged, we're not really talking about migrating the actual desktop, the machine itself. Simply put, we don't care too much about that, and we rarely see, if any, scenarios where people will take an image and actually physically move the machine itself. Now we're talking more about moving everything else around the desktop, the user, the profile, the data, the application, and so on, and how you get there from A to B. Now the choice between between migration and greenfield is really about balancing time and cost versus risk. Starting with greenfield will for sure cost you more money and time, because you have to rebuild everything from scratch. Not only you as a system admin and your team, but also your end users. So if you're giving them basically a free, pure blank desktop to start with, they're gonna have to rebuild it. Think about things that mundane as reorganizing their desktop, re-entering the shortcut on the desktop, remapping their printers, maybe signing onto, let's say, Office 365, finding a way to get their inbox, finding a way to re-enter their signatures. All that in itself will take a few hours for each end user, and that's productivity loss. But it also could be things that you need to prepare, all the settings, configurations, and so on and so forth. So rebuilding, and not to forget, because this is important, application. How many applications do you have? How many applications do you need to install? Are you going to do that from scratch? Probably yes. Application settings. Are you okay losing the application settings from A to B? So it's all about time and cost, starting fresh, clean, versus migrating and saving time. So it's all about that balance. Moving to GCP and itopia presents different challenge than what you've probably been have experience with. You're not moving to, let's say, physical to VDI, or from one VDI platform to another. You're moving to a different location, which means the inherent challenge that goes with it. Of course, you're thinking latency and network. Usually that's almost like the last of the issue we tend to see. Some of them are more tied to the existing management structure and machine you have in place. how do you translate that? Well, for sure, you're going to have an Active Directory, domain, network, and so on. And itopia does an amazing job integrating the cloud into your network environment. So networking is usually not the issue. We're more talking about tools. Are you going to keep? How do you do help desk? How do you keep updates and patches? One of the most current, the most often issue we see when we are involved in migration, especially when we come after the fact, are GPOs, believe it or not, and a number of error message and critical event that occurs because GPO script, login script are applying things that are no longer true because it's in a different environment. Also, the entire thought process is different when it comes to the approach. Before, when you're moving from, again, physical to virtual, let's say on premises, you're looking at a one-time, maybe not one-time, but one-time big investment. You're looking to CapEx. In that case, you want to make sure you get the initial investment right because you're spending all that money, storage, servers, hypervisor, and so on and so forth, and you want to make sure it fits and it allows for growth. Moving to cloud is different. You don't have a one-time big investment. It's all about consumption-based, which means that you have to think about it a slightly different way. You're not risking $1 million in infrastructure day one. But if you move, let's say that you've decided to move all the user data and you suddenly end up moving a couple terabytes of pictures of vacation from your end users to the cloud, you're going to pay that month after month after month after month in storage fee. Same thing with application. If you're moving a ton of applications just because you just move the entire application that the user had installed on that desktop is exactly what I want to see on the cloud, you're going to pay for it in resource, compute power, storage space. So information when making those decisions or even considering whether you should go migration or greenfield, information is going to be key in helping you making those decisions. Which way should you go? Is there opportunity or is there risk tied to that? Now, because we're moving into more of a consumption-based cost, it's not that you have to get it right. And I want to mention this because specifically when you move to a cloud, there's a slight difference in the timing or the sequence of events that you were forced to do before that you're not. Specifically, what I mean is in a typical, let's call it VDI project, because there is a huge CapEx attached to it, we were typically involved to do the assessments before the big move. Like the big thing, okay, let's do a month assessment, make sure we get all the information, the sizing right before we even think about making the same move. When moving to itopia on GCP, it's different. Because it's consumption-based, you don't have that pressure point. You don't have that, you're not forced into a sequence, which means that you can definitely decide to do an assessment or do some monitoring or discovery while building up your pilot or POC on itopia, sometime in parallel. There's no pressure point here. So you'll be completely flexible on that. It's also something that's going to help you do adjustments and adjust and do corrections, small correction as you move forward. So it's definitely possible to say, you know what, I think my target image are going to be that size, 4 vCPUs, 8 gig of RAM, whatever, Win 10. But then based on the data you collect from Stratosphere, make that adjustment while you're still working on the POC. Now, moving into migration, one key concept we wanted to trace out is the idea behind the one-way versus two-way migration. You can do migration on your own. You can decide to, and we often see that with customers, again, typically involved before we get involved, where you could use tools. There are, you have tools at your disposal, USMT, any robocopy that will move the user data if we're thinking just that, for example. The challenge in our mind is that when it comes down to risk, you may want to think about having the ability to go back. So whatever solution you decide or approach you decide, think two-way migration. Think, I need to be able to go back and forth because it could happen. You could have a user among 500, you could have a portion of users 10 or 15 or 50 or 250 that have to work also on premises sometimes, or they're simply not a good fit, and you need to pull them back. So always keep an eye on the exit, and be ready to revert if needed. If you're not completely ready to jump and to say, you know what, we're good, we're jumping to the cloud, consider cloud staging. Cloud staging in our mind is more of a process or an approach where you could approach the entire project in phase. We've had customers that use one of our tools called ProfileUnity that we'll deal later in the webinar, to basically start making a copy of the user data and profile in the cloud. Nothing else. We're not moving. They're still working on premises. It's just right there, which means that once you made that stage, you've already accomplished a number of things. You kind of have invented a DR scenario if that guy loses his laptop, but that's besides the point. You already have one step into the cloud without being completely committed to it. Now, part of those users, you move some of them to the POC, set up the environment with Itopia. They have their profile. You're ready. So you can, I would say, remove or reduce the feeling of jumping off a cliff by following that cloud staging. Move user data, move user profile, move application. Then when you're ready, just move the users. Migration is also an opportunity. What I mean by that is same concept, if you want, as the greenfield, and that's usually the reason why customers will choose greenfield versus migration, which they are worried about garbage in, garbage out. Well, I don't want to copy everything over because I don't want to inherit 50 years, or maybe not 50 years, but 10 years of profile, garbage being accumulated over time. So that's a big focus for us, and it's something what we've completely integrated to the tool, because we do see the migration as an opportunity to decide, what in the profile should be moved up and what should stay wherever it is. Application, data. It's also an opportunity to look at licensing and support costs. Is there applications that are developed, are deployed everywhere that you don't really need? So if you do an assessment and you understand that concept, you can do some cleanup and get some money back. Oops, the wrong way. All right, quick recap, because something that I didn't mention, and if you were not part of the first webinar, just one quick slide to tell you about Liquidware. We have 3 solutions. We're all about workspace management. So for us, end user computing is everything. And we are, best way to describe us is enterprise supporting cast member. So we provide solution to simplify and accelerate the migration or the adoption to the new end user computing platform, aka the cloud. We do 3 things. ProfileUnity delivers user environment management, so everything about the user data and profile. FlexApp delivers application layering. So application layering, if you're not familiar, think about it as exactly the way you deliver you install an application on your smartphone, but for enterprise desktop. Quick, easy layering of application. And finally, Stratosphere UX is all about monitoring and diagnostic. That's primarily what we're going to focus on this first section, which is the assessment part. Right, so what would you want to assess and how you would go about it? So Stratosphere is a product that helps you discover and monitor your existing environments, whether it's physical, virtual, distributed, centralized, it doesn't matter to us. As long as users are logging into a Windows, Linux, or Mac desktop, physical or virtual, we'll see what's going on. Typically, Stratosphere is designed in this particular use cases to really answer 3 questions. What do you have? So pure discovery. What type of resource, application, how many CPUs do you have, how much disk space you have, and so on and so forth. What do you actually use? Same idea. What application do you use? How much of that compute power do you actually need? What disk space do you consume, and so on and so forth. So ultimately, you can get the really important question answer, which is what do you need? So all that is done so that you can determine what's going to be right for my environment. So concept of right sizing, and so on and so forth. This could be done at an individual user, so looking at Bob and Cindy, etc., and understanding what they do. But this is generally done at the high level populations. So this could be applied, for example, in different scenarios. You're moving from individual desktop to Windows 10 multi-session, right? So in that case, I don't really care so much about how much CPU Bob is consuming on a daily basis. I'm more interested to see how much CPU my user population is consuming at peaks, right? My peaks is at 9 o'clock in the morning, over 500 users. I'm peaking at X number of gigahertz. So that will tell me exactly how many Windows 10 multi-session I need on the back end and allow me to play this role. So we've built a number of pre-canned specialized report for itopia and Google that will do the job for you. So you don't need to sort through the data and looking at rows and rows and rows of Excel spreadsheets. We can give you the answer right up. So we kind of tie the intelligence, if you want, with the data. So we get you the answer right away. Couple use cases, obviously sizing, cost estimate, if you're just wondering. US baseline is something I'm going to go through a bit later, as well as application strategy. And actually talking about that. Application strategy, why would you want to consider that? Or what are you going to do with that? Well, the unfortunate truth is that, again, based on our experience, in average, over, let's say, based on 100 applications, most of the time, at least 60% of them are not used consistently across your user base, which means that you have a large number of licenses and software that's installed but never used. The ability to understand how those applications are used, either on the user basis or overall. Like, for example, okay, let's take this application. How many users are actually using it on a weekly or monthly basis? How long it's been running? Are they using it 5 minutes a day, an hour a day, 8 hours a day? How often? Are they launching this application every day, once a week, etc., etc.? As well as how much they consume. All of that is going to help you decide what's the best way to deliver those applications. Now, the implication of that are far beyond just licensing. It's all about how many image you're going to end up having. Do you need an image for the accounting, the finance, the sales, because they're using different applications or not? What's your common thread? If it's an application that's used by everybody all the time, at least an hour a day, yeah, put that in the base image. If not, you're going to pay for it while you don't really need it. So it's all about optimizing application delivering and understanding your options. Should it be on the base image? Should it be hosted? Should it be virtualized, streamed, or layered through FlexApp? So having that information will help you decide what's the best way to deliver those applications as you move forward. Last but not least, UX baseline. Now, this is almost like an afterthought concept, but something I strongly encourage you to consider. The key idea is very simple. What if you could take a snapshot of performance today before you move to itopia? In other words, what you're looking for is to measure what an end user would consider normal in terms of overall performance. Login time, application launch time, that hourglass, the time it takes between the time you click on something and it returns the screen, etc., etc. All of that are how users they're really accustomed to this. They consider that normal. Now, the whole idea about capturing that baseline is so that you can compare the before and after picture and understand, are you better off or not? And if it's not, where is, digging a little bit deeper and understanding where are my pitfalls and where did I improve? This could be useful for many things. It allows you to adjust and make those correction course we talked about as you're running the POC and understanding, okay, I need more CPU. Okay, that application is not behaving well. All right, that configuration is wrong, and so on and so forth. But ultimately, the main goal in our mind is defining success. It's to be able to decide or determine if that settings, that environment, that configuration is right. And also consider that almost like I would say a shield or a defense mechanism when faced with what will inevitably happen, which is a bunch of users complaining because they think things are slow, because they just went downgraded from something on premises to, I don't know, a thin client and something in the cloud. So they're automatically going to think, oh, things are going to get a lot slower. Now you have data. Eliminate the risk, eliminate the perception, base the data to prove that it works. So all in all, assessment, I would say, is specifically for itopia. It's something that will bring you a lot more answers than questions, and help you make the right decision and correction. And I'll finish saying that it's usually something that we recommend doing before or during the pilot or POC. There's no issue either way. And now I'm going to turn back to James, who's going to show you how easy it is. Sorry, James, I don't want to overhype you, to actually get started day one. Take it away.
Oh no, that's fantastic. So can I please have the ability to share my screen? Okay, can everyone see my screen?
You're all good.
Okay, perfect. So what you're looking at here is we're logged into the itopia Cloud Automation Stack platform. And we're going to go through a quick provisioning of a new VDI environment. One thing to point out here is that you can manage multiple deployments in a single instance of itopia. So if there's ever a reason why you needed multiple deployments, again, we can still centrally manage that all here for you. And we can have different administrators that you can have manage different environments. Now, as Thomas said, it's very important when you go through that assessment, the more data and information that we can know about your existing environment, performance, CPU, RAM, type of virtual machines, all this would be a tremendous help as we do create your new environments. So as you see here, as we come to our dashboard, you would simply come here and you would click to spin up a new environment. You would give that environment a name. You can give it some sort of code if you would like, or we auto-generate it. And you would just select to deploy the Microsoft Remote Desktop Services. So you'll land here. And so what you'll see is that we want to really simplify the provisioning of this environment, as Thomas said, to make it as simple as possible. So the first thing we start to ask is just, common configuration questions, starting with your time zone, understanding what operating system you like to choose from, and you can choose the available VMs here in Google Cloud, an estimated number of users that you're looking to support, and then we really want to find out what are you going to do with Active Directory, which is a requirement of this service. So we can create a brand new AD, we can extend to an existing AD, or we can even spin up the new Google managed service for Microsoft Active Directory. Either way, we give you several options and can absolutely support integrating to an on-prem environment. From there, you can select to have redundancy for your domain controllers. You can even provide custom GPOs for your environment in case you didn't want to change any of those policies that have been hardened over years within your organization. So from there, we give it an external DNS name. You can continue to add more redundancy as well if you want that option. Then you would select how you do your file server. And so we'll select here just a Microsoft Windows file server. And we do integrate with the profile containers. That kind of ties into bringing over that data from your user profiles with a technology called FS Logic. So you go through that quick provisioning really around the RDS portion of the environment. And then we would go to the next phase here, where we'll really start to dig in to answer questions around your infrastructure. So we're going to select the project within Google that you're using. Then we can enable things like stack driver monitoring, even the logging agent, which starts to allow you to track CPU and RAM and really be able to address any issues that come up in the environment. So after we go through this portion of the provisioning wizard, we're then going to really tap into what is the topology that you're deploying here. So we'll give you a quick overview of the number of users, the operating system, the machines that you're going to build, the size of the machines that will be built. And again, all of this is very easily configured and manipulated after the deployment's created, and you would just hit deploy. So we're here to support you guys, make this as simple as possible. And if you would, Thomas, would you please take back and bring up the presentation? So again, after this initial deployment, you'll be able to customize your images. You'll be able to even import, custom images directly into the Itopia console. And really, what happens at this point, the integration with Liquidware starts to expand by bringing in things like their ProfileUnity, their Flex app, where we seamlessly kind of bridge your on-prem environments and configurations, and really optimize them now for this new Google Cloud environment. So in that place, I'll pass it back to Thomas, who can really address how we complete the migration after we've spun up this initial environment.
Thank you, James. All right, so at this point of the presentation, if you picture yourself into the process, you're to the point where maybe you've done an assessment and you've got all the information of where you're coming from, you understand application usage, you've set up maybe a POC or pilot or production environment with itopia, you're good to go. How do you typically get there? And that's where the rubber is going to meet the road. Let me see if I can click. There we go. I can click. All right, so quick recap on one thing I wanted to mention. It goes without saying, but I wanted to say it anyway. All the products are support natively Google and work seamlessly with itopia. So we have the ability to migrate, monitor, manage user service, user profile, user data, application natively on Google Cloud. I'm not just talking about, hey, yeah, we're on the marketplace. That we do, of course, but also the ability to store your user profile, user data, your application on Google native storage and saving you even more money instead of having to set up a file server to store those. And it's bi-directional. So everything we do can be done from one way to another. One thing we say a lot internally at Liquidware is, as far as ProfileUnity and FlexApp is concerned, Windows is Windows is Windows. We don't care. One of the reasons we don't care is how ProfileUnity is built. ProfileUnity is completely focused on the end user without any regards. Well, actually, it does regard, but it doesn't really care about how you deliver that desktop to the end user, that workspace, what operating system it's running on. I'll go back to that. And what are the different contexts in which you approach it. What we mean by that is we're able to build or save a profile for a user that will automatically, dynamically adjust on whether you're logging on premises or on itopia desktop, on whether you're connecting to a single session or multi-session, physical or virtual, Windows 7, Windows 10, same profile, everything centered around you, the user. You can make filters and rules based on the machine, so you could have different things that behave differently. But inherently, without doing anything and without having to have any setup whatsoever, we'll deliver that profile and adjust to the environment we're logging into. So what I'm trying to say here is, one, there is no migration. It's kind of overreach, but yeah, we're not moving we're not actually forcing you to step 1, 2, 3. Okay, ready, we're collecting, then, okay, next user needs to do something, then we go to phase 2. No, once we're enabled, we're able to deliver the profile at logon on the environment of your choice. So that's the big thing. Next, because of how we work, we're by definition two-way migration, or I should say like 99 ways migration. Again, we can deliver on the fly and we don't care, which means that if an end user doing a POC, but then is doing maybe a few tasks a day for the POC just to test the environment, is part of the beta users, but then he needs to do his quote unquote real work on his original or initial desktop, yeah, sure. And we can do that without one interfering with the other. There's obviously tweaks and adjustment we can make depending on your rules and your project and how you want to do it. For example, we could have the profile synchronized so that anything you do on that side is going to impact the other side, or not. We have customers that says, no, that's a sandbox environment. They're going to do stupid things. We just want to let them do stupid things without impacting the original. Sure, no problem. But inherently, that barrier between the two becomes almost non-existent. It's the essence of Follow Me profile. Now, what do we mean by profile? Because I realize I'm biased. I've been working in that space for almost 10 years, so it seems obvious to me, but might not be for everybody. Because, excuse me, a user profile has been used by many vendors and in different things. What do we mean by user profile? In short, it's two things. It's one, everything that your system administrator impose on you, settings, rules, GPOs, and so on and so forth. So security, look and feel, things that the system administrator wants you to do. It could be your home drive, the default page on your web browser, the screensaver. God forbid you're using screensaver. Hopefully you're not, at least in VDI on itopia. Security, like the ability, whether you're administrator or not, the ability to install an app or not, the ability to map a printer, the ability to even open a command line, all those security settings. And the second part, which is almost the biggest part, which is everything you do that makes that desktop your desktop. So things you change, whether it's the settings, the preferences of an application, your signature in Outlook, the shortcuts and the favorites you're going to put on your desktop or on your web browser. So we grab that from everywhere Windows, it's stored, and we store that into a directory that's going to be tied to you as a person. So it's going to follow the user. And you can see example here, whether it's looking inside the NT user DAT, which is usually traditional local profile, or even today, FS-Logic, I think, profile, which is one big file that includes everything. Everything you add as a shortcut, registry keys, and so on and so forth. One thing specific about ProfileUnity is that we're not going to store everything at once. We don't force you to take all or nothing, which is usually a big source of serious event logs if you move from one environment to another, and also huge space and so down. So what we do is we've optimized the process behind the curtain so that we'll pick the different rules that you want. You don't want to capture user appearance, the Windows appearance? Great, we won't. So we can do as little or as much as you want. Everything that's going to be tied individually by rules, and everything is going to be tied to the user. Now, the big picture is this. So the result of everything we've said so far is the ability to build what we call a universal profile that may have bits and pieces that only applies to different environments. And that's where I would say the inherent ability of ProfileUnity to dynamically apply some settings based on where you are on context becomes super useful, as well as the ability to make what we call context-aware rules or triggers. So we could say, you know what? When you're on premises, yes, go for Windows appearance. I'm okay if you want the picture of the cat on your desktop. But when you log on itopia, I don't want that. So that will apply here, but not there. And so on and so forth. You can see where you can very easily built a single profile that will apply depending on the scenario and where you're going to. You could even have rules or mechanism based on latency and have different behavior whether you're logging from the office or from the local Starbucks coffee, and so on and so forth. So all that summarized into, there is no migration. We can make it available so that user profile and data will be delivered upon login based on where you are. It seems complex when it talks about context-aware filters and different rules. One way we deliver that is through guided configuration. So we've already thought about and built a number of templates that you can just pick and choose, and say, oh, yeah, I'm going to Windows 10, ping, done. And all those rules, all those configuration will be loaded. This is to say, in short, that we keep the administrator in mind when we build those tools, and we didn't want to have a tool that could do the job, but you have to build it from ground up and need, 6 months of professional services. We build up those configurations so to speed up the adoption, and you don't spend time in doing things that, frankly, you don't need to spend time on. Last piece of the engine or the migration piece, something I didn't touch on too much, is the data itself. So the kickoff, when do you start, and what happens on day one is the last piece I wanted to mention in this section. So once you enable ProfileUnity, deploy that in your environment. So let's say you deploy ProfileUnity and you manage both your on-premises and your itopia environment. What really happened day one? Well, day one on most I would say basic templates or guided configuration, what we're going to do is we're going to harvest the user profile on the first, and that typically happens in most templates at logoff. And once the user logs in once, at the first logon, the very next morning after you set up ProfileUnity, nothing happened at logon. When it logs off, we save that profile. We could have said everything a little based on what you choose in that template, but it's done. It's harvested somewhere on the network share. Typically, what we would do in the migration is we would save that on the cloud location, so it's already available, maybe both through on-premises and on itopia desktop. Now, the data is a different story. We don't want to, let's say you have 5 gigs, 10 gigs, 500 gigs of data on your hard drive or on the network share. You might decide to just keep it on the network share. There's no issue with that. But if you decide to move it from A to B, one thing we typically do is a process called sync, where we're going to start to copy the data from A to B. But we use the sync so that as long as the data is not fully copied over to the destination, you're still working off location A, your source. Now, automatically, if you want to, ProfileUnity will decide to switch over when everything's in sync. So there's no cutoff dates, there's no 3 to 5 a.m. maintenance window. It could do that automatically and says, yep, when it's done, the next time you log in, it's actually going to take the data from the new location, and all the saves and creation will be done over there. So it'll take care of the data transfer in the background if you want. Last piece of the migration, and I realize I'm getting close to time, and I want to give HYCU some time to describe their awesome solution. The last piece I wanted to mention is application layering. So not so much in terms of migration, but application is a tricky one because depending on your environments, you might have to deal with 30, 50, and based on what we've seen, sometimes 300, 400 different applications. So what do you do? Are you going to move everything over and reinstall everything? Yeah, you can. But that's where application layering could become useful. Application layering, in short, allows you to redirect the installation of an application onto a file, a VHD file. It's basically a file that behaves like a disk. And once you've done that, you can attach or mount that VHD to users. It doesn't have to be on the base image. It could be done at boot. It could be done at logon. It could be based on triggers, like when you click on an icon, and so on and so forth. The real powerful aspect of that is the flexibility and the ability to completely distinguish the image building and the image management from the application delivery. Separate those two so you can go fast in either way. Run them in parallel. Have a simple image that only have the application that you use all the time, typically Office, web browser, I don't know, Adobe, and so on and so forth. Those are, your usual tools you use every day. Yeah, they're fine. They should be in the base image because you use them all the time. And then everything else, have that offloaded to application layering. So then you can just drag and drop and assign them to group of users or single users based on their needs. And that's where we circle back to the assessment. Wanted to leave you with that thought. We did a survey a few months back, actually a couple of years ago, on our existing customers. We have we've been in business for almost 10 years. We have about 6 million desktop under management. So we have a good sample. And we ran a full sample on our users. So no question it's biased because it's customers using our tool. So obviously they chose to use our solution. But I thought the data was interesting, something I wanted to share. If you look at how ProfileUnity and FlexApp can help doing the migration or moving to the cloud, the two numbers that strike me is that over most of users have experienced at least 2 hours saved per desktop in actual migration time in terms of FTE time and money. So it reduced the actual time spent to do the migration in average at least 2 hours. So if you can see here, 500 desktop, $30 an hour, that's $30,000 saved just on that. But maybe the one that I'm almost interested more and is less quantifiable is time. So it's not amount of time spent on actually doing the work, is how it could actually shorten the project. And we're talking at least 2 months in average. So whatever you had in plans and you're starting to run late, adding ProfileUnity will actually cut your project short, but at least 2 months for most of our customers. I think they put up to 4 months to be liberal. From what I've looking at the data, it's at least minimum 2 months that you shrink by just leveraging ProfileUnity and FlexApp. And that concludes the migration piece. And I'm going to turn over to Shiva, who will share how you can actually move the data using HYCU one-click migration. Shiva, it's all yours.
Thank you. So let me just. All right, so let me try to share my screen. Just a quick question. Are you guys able to see my screen at all, or?
No, not seeing it yet.
Got it. Where would I see that icon?
All right, tell you what, I'm going to.
All right, I think I see it, but.
I'm going to take control back and give you, make you presenter again here in a moment. And that should hopefully prompt you for it again. Let's give it another shot.
Show my screen. All right.
There you go. I can see it.
Perfect. All right. So thank you, Ray, and thank you, Thomas, for giving me this opportunity about providing a very quick overview of what HYCU can do when it comes to migrating to GCP. Now, I'm not going to take more than 5 minutes about what we can do and what we can offer, especially for customers who are thinking about moving their workloads to GCP. Now, when it comes to like dealing with moving your workloads, we're not just dealing with VDIs, right? I mean, VDIs is definitely one of the part of it, but we're also dealing with moving your applications or moving your production workloads to GCP. Now, to start with, HYCU for on-prem solutions has the ability to perform seamless backups to your GCP object storage. What I mean by seamless here is you don't need any additional installs. You don't need any additional plugins or agents to do backups of your on-prem workloads to GCP. And in addition to that, HYCU has this transparent auto-tiering capability where HYCU can automatically discover your object tiers based on your subscription, and it actually has the ability to move the data from your standard to your archive tiers in a totally like invisible fashion. Like the end user or the application would be totally oblivious to it. So it's not just about performing efficient backups, but it's also about being cost efficient, where we basically store more backups with less amount of investment. And that is the cool aspect of what HYCU can do or has always been doing. But now we also have the ability to do something more than just doing backups to your object storage, which would be the migration. And that's what this whole session is all about, right? Been talking about moving your desktops, or provisioning your desktops, or moving your profiles to GCP. Now, when it comes to moving your workloads to GCP, HYCU has an overarching solution known as the HYCU Protege that helps you to, move your VMs or workloads, like could be virtual machines or could be physical workloads, in an application consistent manner to GCP, right? And we are 100% platform transparent, meaning that you as an end user don't have to do any prep work to move your on-prem workloads to GCP, right? It's basically like one-click migration where we seamlessly move your workloads from point A to point B, point A being your on-prem and point B being your GCP. And in addition to that, we actually provide you the ability to have this bidirectional migration capability. So for instance, if you're trying to qualify your existing applications as GCP ready, then we actually can help you with that as well. Like you can test your applications on GCP, or you can test your databases on GCP, and you can move them back to your on-prem just to qualify the fact that all of your business critical applications are cloud ready, or in this case, ready to be hosted on GCP. Now, one of the cool things about HYCU is when you simply switch or flip the switch of your migration, we can actually even do DR, where you have the ability to leverage your existing GCP infrastructure or your GCP account as a DR target, where we can seamlessly fail over your on-prem workloads onto your GCP cloud. And the big advantage here is you don't have to pay up front for investing in an expensive DR infrastructure. Just think about it. Like if you have like thousands of VMs and you want to have a stable DR infrastructure that would be hosted on-prem, then you need to have that much amount of capital to invest in that on-prem infrastructure for failing over your primary workloads. But with HYCU Protege, you can actually truly leverage GCP, where you have the ability to fail over your on-prem workloads to GCP, and you can fail them back to your on-prem. So this actually gives rise to a totally hybrid infrastructure or a hybrid data center. And speaking of moving your workloads back and forth or moving your workloads to GCP, one of the cool aspects here is we also provide you the ability to customize your compute, your memory, and your VM types, and even your network configuration parameters. So when you're moving your, let's say, a couple of servers from point A to point B, you can undersize or you can oversize your environment based on your discretion. And HYCU can provide you all these capabilities in an extremely transparent manner. And that is the true value add here. Now, I know there's a lot to cover, and I'm trying to provide a high-level overview, but I will be doing an extremely detailed presentation with a live demo, and this will be done on the 21st of July. And this would be basically a VDI data protection redundancy and backup on GCP. This would be the 4th webinar where I'll be doing overarching demonstration of what HYCU can do to accelerate your adoption towards GCP. So yeah, that's pretty much about it from my side, Ray. Thank you.
Thanks, Shiva. Appreciate that. So as we see some questions starting to come in here, again, Shiva did a great job of letting you guys know again about this 4-part webinar series and talking about how he was going to give a more detailed presentation on July 21st. And there, again, watch for the follow-up from this recording, from this webinar with a copy of this recording, the recording from our first session, and then links for the registrations for our second session, which is about unified management of multi-regional VDI on GCP. And then, as Shiva alluded to, the July 21st final session in the 4-part series, where he's going to give a more detailed look at best practices for the data protection, redundancy, and backup on GCP. So Shiva, there's a question that came in during this, and somebody asked, is HYCU available for India and how to get connected?
Absolutely. We do have HYCU available. We do have a dedicated sales force in India. If I can have the contact, like an email, I can actually reach out to that person. Would it be possible for that person to share their email address?
Sure. Well, we'll make sure that we get this noted in the details and get that contact information over to you as well.
So just a quick question. You can actually email to info@hycu.com or google@hycu.com, and you should be hearing from our sales force. So just another thought. Again, it's info at hycu.com or google@hycu.com.
Great. So they also did provide their information, so we'll make sure you get a copy of that, Shiva, when it's all said and done here.
Sure, thank you.
So let's see. Any other questions? Yeah, just a reminder, if you have any questions or comments for any of our panelists, please feel free to direct them via the Q&A or chat window. We've got a few minutes here yet, so anything that you have out there would be good. Thomas, you know, one thing that I saw somebody make a comment about is they were talking about during the assessment portion, and they were talking about, was there any way of looking to see information about connections, especially with a lot of the work from home and things like that, where people haven't maybe transitioned all the way back into the office, to see any of that kind of information as far as the assessment goes?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I should have mentioned that. Thanks for reminding me. Yeah, it's for sure. Today's environment is not the same as it was before March, and that has been some of the challenge we're faced with as people were moving forward with projects, but their end users no longer in the office. So how do you manage that? How do you monitor that? So we've done a couple things with Stratosphere that helps, that should help, whether it's in the assessment portion or even moving forward. One of the things we've added is the ability to monitor what we call the last mile. So we'll see everything that's happening from an end user working from home, from his desktop, all the way to his corporate resource, including the last mile or the first mile, depending on how you look at it. What's going on his how does he connect to internet? So through the ability to track Wi-Fi signal, we're able to tell you, to start with, is he connecting to landline or is he connecting to Wi-Fi? How strong is the signal? But also deeper into that, we're able to do trace routes and understand, you know, how his connection is obviously from here to his network is internet provider, but also how strong is the internet provider? How much bandwidth is giving it? How much latency? Drop packets? Things like that. So we're able to actually monitor the quality of the connection, the remote connection, and understand what's going on. Beyond that, and another interest is understanding what's going on during the sessions. Obviously, that most of the time, that desktop, that laptop that the end user is using doesn't belong to the corporate world. So it's not something you necessarily control or have the ability to deeply modify. So we have the ability to track user activity, and by what we mean by that is not understanding what he does, you know, his private life is his private life, but understanding how the session is going. So how does he remote access? Is he active or not active during the session? Is the session disconnected or just open? When does it connect, etc.? That gives tremendous help to the help desk, whether it's for sizing and understanding when do people connect at the same time, so you get a good understanding of egress and ingress network that you need to GCP, bandwidth, etc., understanding how many images you need at the same time, but also understanding, keeping a tab on users and understanding if something goes wrong, the ability to detect that without having to reach out to the customer and checking if the end user is actually, have problems. So activity level is something that was always there, but in light of what happened recently, has become more and more important, and definitely a tremendous insight when starting to plan a move to GCP, because you're going to need those insights and understand how they connect to their GCP GCP cloud, because you won't necessarily have the visibility into server workload, etc. once it's on GCP.
Thomas, here's another question that came in. Someone said that Liquidware talked about 3 different products: Stratosphere, ProfileUnity, and FlexApp, and wondered, are they all 3 separate products, or are they portions of one solution?
Yes and yes. So they are licensed as separate products, although they can also be packaged as one. So they're inherently integrated with each other, but they're all available as standalone. What I mean by that is they're designed as individual products, but we've obviously, because we built all 3 of them, we've integrated all them together. I'll give you an example, 2 examples. FlexApp does application layering. So when you log in, bing, deliver the application shows up. It shows up as if it's native on your environment. I'm a user. I'm using that application that's FlexApp. I'm going to change stuff. I'm going to change another language because I'm French, and I'm going to change a default language to French. I'm going to change a couple of settings, etc., etc. Those settings, that personalization that I'm doing with that application, and you can think maybe an easier example is a web browser. That's not part of the VHD. FlexApp is not going to serve that because it's not FlexApp's job. FlexApp's job is just to deliver the application as it was packaged. That job, those settings, those personalization are going to be captured by ProfileUnity. Now, because ProfileUnity and FlexApp knows about each other, the timing, the synchronization is going to be done seamlessly. So you won't know. Somebody using, if I were to do a demo, you wouldn't know that, for example, me adding a shortcut to Firefox or to Chrome is being done by ProfileUnity, while Chrome is being delivered by FlexApp. But that's what's happening under the curtain.
Okay, great. And here's a question that came in, and maybe this is best covered by giving everybody an opportunity to respond, but somebody said, any plans on arranging detailed trainings and discussing detailed working architecture of the products?
So yeah,
go ahead, James. I was going to say, thinking I'm probably talking for James and Shiva, but we haven't planned that on the webinar series because we wanted to be addressing a broad audience, but would definitely be happy to set up a follow-up, either deep dive or architecture sharing as a webinar, or maybe a one-on-one. So if that's something, if there's an interest, please reach out to us. We'll probably follow up since you've sent the question in the chat through email, but we'll be happy to set up that on one-on-one if that's what you're looking for. Go ahead, James.
Yeah, I totally agree from the Itopia side as well. Each use case could be different. You may have particular questions. If you're interested in learning more, just submit your email, and we'll be glad to reach out and set up a one-on-one with you.
I couldn't agree more, guys. I mean, yes, we do have detailed training courses, training videos, lab exercises. We'll be more than happy to share them with you. We just need your contact, and we can reach out to you. So, yeah.
Excellent. Well, I know we're a few minutes over, so any other questions that are there, we will follow up with people offline. If you continue to have any questions, feel free to reach out. Again, watch for an email in the day or so following this event with a link to the recording and to the upcoming sessions and the past sessions as well. We thank you for joining us. Thank you to James, Thomas, and Shiva for taking us through today's presentation, and we look forward to hopefully seeing you next week for our Unified Management webinar. So thank you again for joining us, and have a great day.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.